High above the clouds at 35,000 feet, Victor Grayson, Titan Industries' ruthless CEO, lounged in his private jet, whiskey glass in hand, smirking at Nia Jackson. She sat across, poised in a gray suit, sipping coffee, files in, lap. "Guess they're letting anyone on my jet now," he slurred, then flung his drink in her face. Nia wiped it off, lips curling into a smirk as he cackled. The pilot's voice cut through. "Ms. Jackson, you're needed up front." Victor froze. Why her? What chaos awaited him below? "Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. If you stand for justice kicking arrogance to the curb, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more epic showdowns." The private jet's cabin hummed with the low thrum of engines slicing through the sky at 35,000 feet. A sleek cocoon of luxury wrapped in polished wood and creamy leather seats. 15 passengers, a mix of Titan Industries, top brass and their underlings, filled the space, some sipping champagne, others flipping through reports, all basking in the glow of their elite status. Victor Grayson, 52, sprawled in his seat near the front, his crisp white shirt unbuttoned. At the collar, a half-empty whiskey glass dangling from his thick fingers. His sharp jaw clenched as his bloodshot eyes locked onto Nia Jackson, 38, seated across from him. She sat ramrod straight, her tailored gray suit hugging her frame, a steaming coffee cup balanced on the armrest beside her stack of files. Her dark skin gleamed under the cabin's soft lighting, and her steady hands betrayed no hint of the chaos Victor had just unleashed by splashing his drink across her face moments ago. Now, he was ready to double down. Victor leaned forward, his lips twisting into a sneer as he raised his voice loud enough for every soul on the jet to hear. "You don't belong here," he barked, his tone dripping with venom. "What's next? Letting the cleaning crew sit up here with us real players?" A few executives shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Victor and Nia, while others smirked, nodding along like trained dogs. He slammed his glass onto the tray table, the clink echoing like a gunshot. "This is my jet, my world, and you're stinking it up. Go scrub something. That's more your speed." The words landed hard, raw, and unfiltered, slicing through the cabin's refined air. A junior exec, Tom Hensley, 31, with sandy hair and a nervous twitch, coughed into his fist from 2 rows back, his face flushing red. The rest of the passengers held their breath, waiting to see if Nia would crack. She didn't. Nia tilted her head slightly, her deep brown eyes locking onto Victor's with a calm that made his neck hairs bristle. She dabbed the last of the whiskey from her cheek with a napkin, folding it neatly before setting it aside. "Funny," she said, her voice smooth as glass, cutting through his bluster. "I didn't realize insecurity came with a corner office. Must be tough knowing you're only here because Daddy handed you the keys." A ripple of stifled laughter rolled through the cabin. Tom's eyes widened, a grin tugging at his lips. A gray-haired VP, Marjorie Klein, 60, coughed to mask her own chuckle. Victor's face darkened, his knuckles whitening around the armrest. She'd hit a nerve, and he hated her more for it. He shot up, towering over her, his 6'2" frame casting a shadow across her seat. "You've got some nerve talking to me like that," he spat, jabbing a finger toward her. "I don't care what sob story got you on this plane, you're out of your league. Somebody get her off my jet." His voice boomed, a king issuing a decree. He spun toward the crew, 3 flight attendants in crisp Navy uniforms hovering near. "The galley." "You, Blondie," he snapped at the youngest, a 20-something named Kelly with wide blue eyes. "Tell the pilot to kick her off now." Kelly froze, her hands twisting together, glancing at her colleagues for backup. The other, 2, a wiry man named Greg and a stern woman named Linda, exchanged uneasy looks but didn't move. The passengers watched, some leaning forward, others sinking deeper into their seats, the air thick with anticipation. Nia crossed her legs, brushing a speck of lint from her knee as if Victor's tantrum was background noise. "You might want to sit down," she said, her tone even, almost bored. "You're embarrassing yourself, and I'd hate for you to trip over that ego when we land." Another snicker, louder this time, erupted from Tom. Marjorie pressed a hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Even Greg, the wiry attendant, bit his lip to stifle a smirk. Victor's head whipped around, his glare landing on Tom like a predator, spotting prey. "You think this is funny, Hensley?" he roared, storming down the aisle. "You're done. Fired. Pack your crap when we hit the ground. I don't need clowns in my company." Tom's face drained of color, his jaw dropping, as he stammered, "Sir, I didn't mean—" But Victor cut him off with a wave, turning back to Nia, his chest heaving. "You see that?" Victor said, pointing at Tom's crumpled form. "That's what happens when you cross me. I run this show, lady, and you're nothing but a glitch I'm about to erase." He straightened his tie, smoothing his hair with a trembling hand, his smirk creeping back as he regained his footing. The cabin fell silent, the laughter dying under his icy stare. He'd flexed his power, and it felt good, like slipping into a favorite suit. The executives nodded faintly, falling back in line. Kelly shuffled forward, her voice quivering. "Mr. Grayson, I'll speak to the pilot." She scurried toward the cockpit, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Nia watched her go, then leaned back, folding her arms. "Impressive," she said, her sarcasm sharp enough to cut steel. "A whole tantrum just to prove you're scared of a woman who's already outsmarted you." Victor's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing. What did she mean by that? Before he could snap back, Tom piped up, his voice shaky but firm. "She's right, you know. You're acting like a bully, not a CEO." The words hung there, bold and unexpected, a pebble tossed into a still pond. Marjorie nodded faintly, her lips pursed. A murmur of agreement flickered through the cabin, soft but growing, like a spark catching dry grass. Victor's head snapped toward Tom, his face twisting into a snarl. "You're begging for it, kid," he growled, stomping back toward him. "You want to play hero? I'll bury you with her." He loomed over Tom, who shrank into his seat, his bravado fading fast. The other passengers shifted, some whispering, others averting their eyes. Victor's power was flexing again, bending the room to his will. He turned to Nia, his voice dropping low, menacing. "You think you've got them on your side? Watch this." He spun toward the cockpit, bellowing, "Pilot, get us to the nearest dump of an airport. We're dropping this trash off where she belongs." His words oozed with spite, each syllable a jab at Nia's dignity, painting her as less than human in front of everyone. The cabin tilted slightly as the jet banked, the pilot's voice crackling over the intercom. "Adjusting course, Mr. Grayson. ETA to alternate landing, 40 minutes. Victor grinned, triumphant, folding his arms as he sank back into his seat. "See?" he said, loud enough for all to hear. "This is my jet, my rules. You're gone, sweetheart." He grabbed a fresh whiskey from Linda, who'd appeared with a tray, her face tight with discomfort. He took a long swig, savoring the burn, his eyes locked on Nia. The passengers settled, some nodding in reluctant approval, others staring out the windows, avoiding the scene. Tom slumped, defeated, his hands clasped in his lap. Nia didn't flinch. She picked up her coffee, taking a slow sip, her gaze steady on Victor. "Keep digging," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made his stomach twist. "You're going to love the hole you've made." Her lips curved into that same infuriating smirk from before, the one that said she knew something he didn't. Victor's grip tightened on his glass, the whiskey sloshing slightly. What was she playing at? The crew shuffled nervously, Kelly whispering to Greg near the galley. The executives murmured among themselves, their glances darting between Victor's flushed face and Nia's unshakable calm. The jet hummed on, cutting through the night, but the air inside felt heavier now, charged with something unspoken. Victor leaned back, forcing a chuckle to mask the unease creeping up his spine. He'd won this round, hadn't he? He'd humiliated her, fired a dissenter, and bent the flight to his will. The passengers might whisper, but they'd fall in line. They always did. Yet Nia's eyes, sharp and unflinching, bored into him, and for a fleeting second he wondered if he'd misjudged her. No, he told himself, shaking it off. She was nobody, a blip he'd squash. He raised his glass in a mock toast, his voice booming. "To the top dogs," he said, winking at Marjorie, who didn't smile back. The jet banked harder, descending toward some backwater strip, and Victor settled in, smug as ever. But Nia's smirk lingered, a quiet promise of chaos he couldn't yet see. The jet's cabin buzzed with a restless energy as it sliced through the night sky, now 30 minutes from Victor Grayson's impromptu detour to some nowhere airstrip. The sleek interior, with its polished wood paneling and cushioned seats, felt more like a pressure cooker than a luxury haven. 15 passengers, executives, assistants, and a rattled Tom Hensley sat stiffly, their eyes flickering between Victor and Nia Jackson. Victor lounged in his seat, his second whiskey of the hour sweating in his grip, his smug grin stretching wider with every sip. He'd just ordered the pilot to dump Nia at the nearest dump, and the crew had obeyed, the jet banking slightly as it descended toward his chosen exile spot. Nia, still pristine in her gray suit despite the earlier whiskey-soaked insult, sat across from him, her coffee cup empty now, her stack of files untouched. Her calm was a splinter under Victor's skin, and he was itching to dig deeper. He leaned forward, his voice rising to fill the cabin again thick with mockery. "Enjoying your last minutes up here with the big shots," he taunted, swirling his glass so the ice clinked. "Because once we land, you're done. I've got people waiting. To haul you off for trespassing on my jet. Should have stayed where you belong, fetching coffee, not drinking it." His words were a sledgehammer, blunt and vicious, aimed to crush her in front of everyone. A few execs nodded faintly, conditioned to his bluster, while Marjorie Klein, the gray-haired VP, tightened her lips, her pen pausing over her notes. Tom, still reeling from being fired, clenched his fists in his lap, his face a mix of fear and fury. The flight attendants, Kelly, Greg, and Linda, huddled near the galley, their whispers sharp and anxious. Kelly's hands trembled as she clutched a tray, her blue eyes darting to Nia, then away. Victor snapped his fingers toward Greg, the wiry attendant with a buzz cut. "You! Get me the satellite phone. I'm calling my security chief. This nobody's getting cuffed the second we touch down." His tone was a command, not a request, and Greg hesitated, his jaw ticking. Linda, the stern one, nudged him forward with a glare, and he shuffled to a compartment, retrieving a bulky black phone. Victor snatched it, punching in a number with theatrical flair, his eyes never leaving Nia. "Yeah, Carl," he said loudly as the call connected. "It's me. Got an intruder on my jet. Black woman thinks she's somebody. Have a team ready to arrest her for trespassing when we land. Make it quick." He hung up, tossing the phone onto the tray table with a thud, then grinned at Nia. "Hear that? That's the sound of your little adventure ending." The cabin tilted as the jet dropped lower, turbulence rattling the overhead bins. Passengers gripped their armrests, but Nia didn't budge. She reached into her blazer pocket, pulling out a slim leather wallet, and flipped it open with a flick of her wrist. A glossy ID card gleamed under the cabin lights, her name in bold followed by Senior Consultant Titan Industries. She held it up, letting Victor's eyes lock onto it. "I'm not trespassing," she said, her voice steady as steel. "I'm here on business, your business. Maybe check your roster before you call in your goons." The words landed like a slap, crisp and undeniable. Tom's head jerked up, a spark of hope in his eyes. Marjorie raised an eyebrow, leaning forward to squint at the ID. Even Kelly paused, her tray tilting slightly as she gaped. Victor's grin vanished, his face flushing a mottled red. He snatched the ID from her hand, his thick fingers smudging the edges as he studied it. "This is fake," he snarled, but his voice wavered, a crack in his armor. He thrust it at Greg. "Verify this now!" Greg fumbled with the phone again, dialing a number, his voice low as he muttered to someone on the other end. The cabin held its breath, the hum of the engines a dull roar beneath the silence. After a tense minute, Greg looked up, his face pale. "It's legit, sir. She's on the consultant list, hired last month." He handed the ID back to Nia, who took it with a slow, deliberate nod, tucking it away as if she'd just won a chess match. Victor's jaw clenched so hard his teeth creaked. He slammed his glass down, whiskey sloshing onto the tray, and leaned back, his chest heaving. "Fine," he spat, his voice low and venomous. You've got a fancy card. Doesn't mean you belong here. He waved a hand dismissively, signaling the crew to stand down. Greg retreated to the galley, Linda following with a scowl. Kelly lingered, her eyes flicking to Nia with a mix of awe and relief. The passengers murmured, some nodding at Nia's cool-headed win, others whispering about Victor's stumble. Tom straightened in his seat, a faint grin breaking through his nerves. "She's got you there," he muttered, loud enough for Victor to hear. Nia met Victor's glare, her smirk returning, sharper now. "You're digging your own grave," she said, her words a quiet blade. "Keep swinging, though. It's a great show." The cabin buzzed with soft laughter, Marjorie's pen scratching furiously as she jotted something down. Victor's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. She dodged his arrest threat, turned his own crew against him with a single move. He'd lost this round, and it stung worse than a punch to the gut. But he wasn't done, not by a long shot. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a hiss only she could hear. "You think you're slick? Enjoy it while it lasts." Then he acted. While Nia turned to adjust her files, Victor slipped a hand into his briefcase, pulling out a small metallic object, a pocket knife with a sleek handle. With a quick practiced move, he slid it into the side pocket of her bag, nestled among her papers, out of sight. His lips twitched into a cruel smile as he leaned back, sipping his whiskey again. "Let's see how smart you are when they find that," he muttered under his breath, his eyes glinting with malice. The jet shuddered through another patch of turbulence, the lights flickering briefly, and Victor settled in, his confidence creeping back. He'd just set a trap, one she'd never see coming. The passengers relaxed slightly, the tension easing as the jet leveled out, now 20 minutes from the airstrip. Tom whispered to Marjorie, "She's tougher than he is." Marjorie nodded, her lips pursed in approval. The crew resumed their duties, Kelly pouring water for a nervous exec, Greg wiping down a counter. Nia flipped open a file, her pen moving across the page, oblivious to the danger Victor had planted. The cabin's air felt lighter, the execs chatting quietly, some even smiling at Nia's victory. She'd outplayed him, turned his power move into a joke, and for a moment, it seemed like she'd won more than just a seat on the jet. But Victor's smirk grew, his fingers tapping the armrest in a slow, steady rhythm. He'd lost the crowd, sure, but he'd rigged the game now. A knife in her bag. Security would flip when they found it. Trespassing was one thing. A weapon was a whole other beast. He imagined her face when they dragged her off, the smugness wiped clean, replaced by panic. He took another swig of whiskey, the burn fueling his glee. She might have dodged the arrest, but he'd make sure she crashed harder next time. The jet hummed on, dropping lower, the airstrip lights faintly visible through the windows. Whatever, she was hiding. He'd bury her with it. Hey folks, what do you think? Comment number 1 if you're cheering for Nia to keep schooling Victor like the boss she is. Drop a like if you love seeing arrogance get a reality check, and subscribe so you don't miss her next move. Who's with me on this justice ride? Tell me below. Now here's the big question. What's Victor got up his sleeve with that knife? Will Nia spot it before it's too late? Or is she flying straight into a storm she can't outsmart? Stick around to find out. The private jet's engines growled as it descended through thick gray clouds, now just 10,000 feet above a dusty airstrip in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. The cabin's luxury, soft leather seats, gleaming wood trim, and dimmed ambient lights, felt suffocating, the air heavy with the aftermath of Victor Grayson's failed arrest threat. 15 passengers shifted restlessly, their eyes darting between Victor, sprawled in his seat with a fresh whiskey, and Nia Jackson, poised across from him, her gray suit still crisp despite the chaos. Victor's smugness had returned, a sly glint in his bloodshot eyes as he nursed his drink, his fingers brushing the armrest where he'd stashed his little secret. Nia's bag sat innocently beside her, the pocket knife he'd planted tucked deep in its side pocket, waiting to spring. His trap. The jet jolted through turbulence, the overhead bins rattling, but Victor's grin only widened. He'd lost the last round, but this one would be a knockout. Kelly, the young blonde flight attendant, moved down the aisle, her tray wobbling as she offered water to a jittery exec. Her blue eyes flicked nervously toward Naya's bag, then away, as if she sensed something brewing. Victor caught her glance and leaned forward, his voice cutting through the cabin's hum. "Hey, Blondie," he called, loud enough to turn heads. "Check her bag. I don't trust her sitting here with us decent folks." His tone dripped with malice, the words a dog whistle to the passengers, Marjorie Klein, Tom Hensley, and the rest, who'd just started to relax after Nia's credentialed victory. Kelly froze, her tray tilting, a glass nearly sliding off. "Sir?" she stammered, her voice small. Victor waved a hand, impatient. "You heard me. She's got something in there. I can feel it." Nia's head tilted slightly, her deep brown eyes narrowing as she watched Victor's play unfold. She didn't move, didn't reach for the bag, just let the moment stretch. Kelly hesitated, glancing at Greg and Linda near the galley. Greg shrugged, his wiry frame tense, while Linda nodded. Curtly, her stern face unreadable, with a shaky breath, Kelly set her tray on an empty seat and stepped toward Naya's bag, her fingers trembling as she unzipped the side pocket. The cabin went still, 15 pairs of eyes locked on her hands. She rummaged for a second, then gasped, pulling out the pocket knife Victor had slipped in minutes ago. Its sleek handle glinted under the lights, the blade folded but menacing. "Oh my God," Kelly whispered, dropping it onto the tray table with a clatter. Victor shot up, his 6'2" frame looming as he pointed at Naya. "What the hell is that?" he roared, his voice a thunderclap. "A weapon? On my jet? She's a damn terrorist." The word hit like a bomb, igniting panic. Marjorie clutched her pen, her knuckles white. Tom's jaw dropped, his earlier defiance replaced by shock. A balding exec named Paul muttered, "Jesus," under his breath, while a younger assistant, Claire, shrank into her seat, wide-eyed. Victor spun toward the crew, his face a mask of righteous fury. "Call security, lock her up now, she's a threat to every one of us." His accusations piled up, each one sharper, uglier. "I knew it. You can't trust people like her. Sneaky, dangerous, waiting to stab us in the back." The passengers erupted into chaos. Paul shouted, "Get her off the plane!" Claire whimpered, clutching her purse. Even Marjorie, who'd smirked at Nia's earlier win, looked uncertain, her pen hovering over her notes. Kelly backed away, her hands shaking, while Greg bolted for the satellite phone, dialing frantically. Linda stepped forward, her voice firm. "Everyone stay calm, we're handling it." But her eyes betrayed her, darting to Nia, then Victor, unsure who to believe. The jet dipped lower, the airstrip's faint lights now a blurry glow through the windows, 5,000 feet below. Victor paced, his chest puffed out, feeding the frenzy. "This is what happens when you let them in," he snarled, his gaze raking over Nia. "They don't belong with us. Never will." Nia didn't flinch. She leaned back, crossing her legs, her hands resting lightly on her knees. "Nice try," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. "But that's not mine." She reached for the knife, picking it up with 2 fingers as if it were a dead bug, and held it out for all to see. "This is a prop. I used it in a client demo last week. Titanium alloy, blunt edge. Couldn't cut butter." She pressed the blade against her palm, dragging it slowly to prove her point. No mark, no blood. The cabin fell silent, the panic stalling as passengers leaned forward, squinting at the harmless toy in her hand. Victor's face twisted, his triumph souring. "Bull!" he snapped, lunging to grab it. Nia pulled it back, tossing it onto her tray table with a soft clink. "Check the serial number," she said, nodding at Greg, who still clutched the phone. "It's registered to Titan's R&D department. I've got the paperwork." She tapped her stack of files, pulling out a single sheet, a purchase order with Titan's logo, dated 10 days ago, listing the prop knife for a security tech demo. Greg took it, his eyes scanning the page, then nodded slowly. "She's right," he muttered, handing it to Linda, who frowned as she read. The tide turned. Tom, still pale from his firing, pulled out his phone, his hand steady now. "I'm recording this," he said, his voice firm as he aimed the camera at Victor. "You planted that, didn't you? Trying to frame her?" The lens caught Victor's flushed face, his eyes darting as the passengers murmured. Marjorie set her pen down, her voice low but clear. "That's low, Victor. Even for you." Paul crossed his arms, his earlier panic replaced by disgust. Claire peeked out from behind her purse, whispering to the exec beside her, "He's losing it." The crew stepped back, Kelly clutching her tray like a shield, Greg and Linda exchanging a look that said they'd picked the wrong side. Victor's chest heaved, his fists clenching as he glared at Nia. "You think you're clever?" he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "This isn't over." He'd been exposed. His trap flipped back on him, and the cabin knew it. Nia met his stare, her smirk widening. "Keep going," she said, her tone almost playful. "You're making this too easy." The jet shuddered as it dropped to 3,000 feet, the landing gear whining as it locked into place. The passengers settled, their whispers turning to quiet support for Nia. Tom kept filming, the red light steady, capturing every second of Victor's unraveling. But Victor wasn't done. His mind raced, his humiliation burning hotter than the whiskey in his gut. He'd lost the crowd again, his frame-up backfiring spectacularly. But he had one more card. As the jet leveled out, 2,000 feet from the ground, he slipped a hand into his pocket, pulling out a small remote, a backup he kept for emergencies. With a discreet flick, he pressed a button, triggering a silent command to the jet's oxygen system. A faint hiss sounded from the vents unnoticed by the distracted crew and passengers. His lips twitched into a dark smile. "Let's see how you handle this," he muttered, sinking back into his seat, his eyes locked on Nia. The cabin lights flickered, the jet now 1,000 feet from the airstrip, the runway lights a sharp line in the darkness. Nia flipped open another file, her pen scratching notes oblivious to the new danger. Tom lowered his phone slightly, whispering to Marjorie, "She's unstoppable." Marjorie nodded, her earlier doubt gone. The execs relaxed, some even smiling at Nia's cool-headed win. The crew resumed their prep for landing, Kelly stacking trays, Greg checking seatbelts. But Victor's grin grew, his fingers tapping the remote in his pocket. Oxygen levels were dropping, slowly, subtly. A sabotage he'd pin on Nia. The jet's descent steepened, the engines roaring, and he leaned back, waiting for the chaos to erupt. She'd cleared her name this time, but he'd make sure the next fall was fatal. The private jet's cabin vibrated as it plunged through the final stretch of its descent, now hovering at 20,000 feet above the barren Nevada airstrip. The sleek interior, plush leather seats, warm wood accents, and muted lighting shimmered, with an eerie calm after Nia Jackson's deft dismantling of Victor Grayson's frame-up. 15 passengers exhaled, their nerves settling as the jet's landing gear hummed below. Victor slumped in his seat, his third whiskey of the hour clutched tightly, his face a storm cloud of fury and humiliation. Nia sat across from him, her gray suit pristine, her stack of files open as she scribbled notes with a steady hand. The pocket knife prop, now a symbol of her victory, lay discarded on her tray table, its blunt edge gleaming under the lights. But Victor's dark smile lingered, his fingers brushing the remote in his pocket. He'd triggered the oxygen sabotage minutes ago, and the trap was closing. The first sign came softly. A faint hiss from the overhead vents, drowned by the engines. R. Kelly, the blonde flight attendant, paused mid-step, her tray of empty glasses tilting as she frowned at the ceiling. Greg, wiry and alert, cocked his head near the galley, his brow furrowing. Linda, stern as ever, adjusted a passenger's seatbelt, oblivious to the shift. Victor leaned forward, his voice slicing through the quiet. "What's that smell?" he barked, loud enough to jolt the cabin. "Something's off, check it now." His tone was a mix of feigned concern and glee, his eyes darting to Nia. The passengers stirred. Marjorie Klein glanced up from her notes, Tom Hensley gripped his phone, still filming, and Paul, the balding exec, sniffed the air, his face tightening. Before the crew could react, the oxygen masks dropped. Yellow cups dangled from the ceiling, swinging wildly as the cabin erupted into chaos. A shrill alarm blared, red lights flashing along the walls. Claire, the young assistant, screamed, clawing at her mask while Paul fumbled with his hands shaking. Marjorie stayed calm, slipping hers on with practiced ease, her eyes sharp. Tom's phone clattered to the floor as he grabbed a mask, his breath ragged. "What's happening?" he yelled, his voice muffled. Kelly dropped her tray, glasses shattering, and scrambled to help Claire. Greg bolted for the cockpit, shouting, "System failure!" Linda barked orders, her stern facade cracking as she wrestled with a jammed mask for an exec. Victor shot up, his 6'2" frame dominating the aisle, his mask dangling unused around his neck. "It's her!" he roared, pointing at Nia. "She's sabotaging my jet. I told you she's a threat." His accusation landed like gasoline on a fire, fueling the panic. Paul ripped off his mask, his face red. "She's killing us!" he shouted, lunging toward Nia's seat. Claire sobbed, "Do something." Even Marjorie hesitated, her pen slipping from her grip. The crew froze, torn between Victor's command and their training. The jet lurched, dropping another 1,000 feet. The altitude gauge ticking down fast. 19,000, 18,000. The air thinned, head spinning, lungs tightening. Nia didn't panic. She slipped on her mask with one fluid motion, her deep brown eyes scanning the chaos. "He's lying," she said, her voice steady through the plastic, loud enough to cut through the din. She stood, brushing past Paul's flailing arms, and moved toward the galley, her steps sure despite the tilting floor. Victor's eyes widened. He hadn't expected her to act. "Stop her!" he bellowed, shoving Kelly aside as he chased her. But Nia was already at the oxygen control panel, a small hatch near the galley's sink. She yanked it open, revealing a tangle of wires and a blinking red light. Victor's sabotage in plain sight. Her fingers moved fast, years of engineering know-how kicking in. She traced the wires, finding the override switch Victor had remotely flipped. "Amateur," she muttered, flipping it back. A loud click echoed, the hiss fading as fresh oxygen surged through the vents. The alarm silenced, the red lights dimming to green. Passengers gasped, sucking in air, their masks fogging with relief. Claire slumped in her seat, tears streaking her face. Paul sank back, his chest heaving. Marjorie adjusted her mask, her gaze locking on Nia with newfound respect. Tom retrieved his phone, filming again, the lens catching Nia's calm triumph. Victor's face twisted, his plan unraveling in real time. "No!" he roared, lunging for the panel, but Greg intercepted, shoving him back with surprising force. "Sit down, sir," Greg snapped, his wiry frame bristling. Linda stepped up, beside him, her stern eyes daring Victor to push further. The jet leveled out at 15,000 feet, the airstrip's dusty outline sharpening below. Nia turned, brushing her hands together as if dusting off dirt. "You really thought that'd work?" she said, her smirk cutting deeper than ever. "I've fixed worse systems blindfolded." The passengers stared, awe replacing fear. Tom's voice broke the silence, shaky but bold. "She just saved us." Cheers erupted, soft at first, then loud, rolling through the cabin like a wave. Marjorie clapped, her palms sharp against the tray table. Claire wiped her eyes, nodding frantically. Paul muttered, "Holy hell." His earlier panic forgotten. Even the crew joined in, Kelly clapping with trembling hands, Greg flashing a rare grin. Nia stood tall, her gray suit a beacon amid the chaos, her files still neatly stacked on her seat. She'd turned Victor's death trap into her victory lap, and the cabin knew it. Tom zoomed in with his phone, capturing Victor's flushed, furious face as the cheers drowned him out. Victor sank into his seat, his whiskey glass empty, his hands trembling with rage. He'd lost again, worse this time. She'd saved the jet, turned his sabotage into her heroism, and the passengers were hers. Now, his chest burned, his mind racing for a way to claw back control. They were at 12,000 feet, minutes from landing, and he was a fool in their eyes. But he wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his voice a low growl only Nia could hear. "You're dead when we land." Her smirk didn't waver, but her eyes hardened, ready for whatever came next. He acted fast. While the crew checked passengers and Nia returned to her seat, Victor pulled out his phone, switching to a secure app. He typed a coded message to his tech team on the ground. "Hijack comms. Fake distress call. Pin it on her. Now." He hit send, his lips curling into a snarl. The jet dropped to 10,000 feet, the runway lights glaring through the windows. He'd lost the cabin, but he'd take the skies. A fake distress call, broadcast to air traffic control, branding Nia a hijacker. It'd be her word against his, and his carried weight. He pocketed the phone, his confidence flickering back. She might have fixed the oxygen, but he'd make her a national villain. The jet steadied at 8,000 feet, the passengers settling, their masks dangling unused. Marjorie whispered to Tom, "She's a genius." Tom nodded, his footage rolling, the red light steady. Claire adjusted her hair, her breathing calm. Paul leaned back, muttering, "Didn't see that coming." The crew resumed landing prep, Kelly sweeping up glass, Greg securing the galley. Nia sat down, flipping open her files again, her pen moving with quiet precision. She'd saved them all, turned Victor's chaos into her crown, and for a moment, the cabin glowed with her win. The jet's wheels whined as they neared the ground. 6,000 feet, then 5. Victor watched her, his grin returning, darker now. The distress call was in motion. He could feel it. Fighter jets would scramble soon, and Nia would be the target. He'd lost the passengers, sure, but he'd win the war. The jet dropped to 4,000 feet, the airstrip a stark line below, and he leaned back, sipping the last drops of his whiskey. She'd played her hand, but his was still coming. The engines roared, the cabin tilting slightly, and he waited, his pulse steadying. She'd saved the day, but he'd make sure it was her last. The jet hummed on, 3,000 feet from touchdown, and Victor's trap tightened around her. The private jet sliced through the dusk sky at 10,000 feet, its engines a steady growl as it neared the dusty Nevada airstrip. The cabin's luxury, velvet seats, polished oak tables, and soft golden lights, felt like a fragile shell against the chaos Victor Grayson had unleashed. 15 passengers sat tense, their oxygen masks stowed after Nia Jackson's heroic fix, their eyes flickering with a mix of awe and exhaustion. Victor lounged in his seat, his empty whiskey glass abandoned, his thick fingers tapping a rhythm of quiet menace. His dark grin was back, sharper now, fueled by the fake distress call he'd triggered minutes ago. Nia sat across from him, her gray suit impeccable, her pen gliding over files as if the near-death sabotage hadn't fazed her. The jet dropped to 9,000 feet, the runway a faint scar below. But Victor's real weapon was already in the air. A sudden roar shattered the calm. 2 F-16 fighter jets streaked past, their sleek forms glinting in the fading light. The cabin windows rattled, passengers jolting upright. Claire, the young assistant, gasped, pressing her face to the high glass. "What's that?" she squeaked, her voice trembling. Paul, the balding exec, leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Military?" he muttered, his earlier relief gone. Marjorie Klein set her notes aside, her sharp eyes narrowing. Tom Hensley grabbed his phone, resuming his recording, the red light, blinking as he aimed it at the chaos unfolding outside. The jet's intercom crackled, the pilot's voice tight. "This is Captain Reese. Air traffic controls received a distress call from our comms. They think we've got a hijacker on board." Victor shot up, his 6'2" frame filling the aisle, his voice booming with rehearsed outrage. "It's her!" he shouted, jabbing a finger at Nia. "She's the one! I warned you, she's dangerous!" His words were a venomous flood, soaking the cabin in panic. "She's a hijacker, a lunatic. Look what she's done already. Oxygen sabotage, now this." He spun toward the crew, Kelly, Greg, and Linda, his eyes wild. "Lock her down before she crashes us," Claire whimpered, clutching her armrest. Paul nodded furiously. "She's out of control." Even Marjorie hesitated, her pen tapping her tray, doubt creeping in. The jet dropped to 8,000 feet, the F-16s circling like vultures, their engines a deafening hum. Nia didn't blink. She set her pen down, folding her hands in her lap, her deep brown eyes locking onto Victor with a calm that made his skin crawl. "You're good at this," she said, her voice smooth and unshaken, cutting through the noise. "But you're not that good." She stood, brushing her suit jacket smooth, and moved toward the galley, ignoring Victor's bellowed, "Stop her!" Kelly stepped aside, her tray clattering, too stunned to act. Greg lunged, but Nia sidestepped, reaching the comms panel, a small console beside the oxygen controls she'd fixed earlier. Her fingers danced over the keys, pulling up the jet's communication logs with a speed that spoke of years behind tech desks. The passengers watched, breathless, as the jet dipped to 7,000 feet. Victor charged after her, shoving Linda out of the way, his face a mask of fury. "She's hacking it now!" he roared, reaching for her arm. Nia twisted free, her voice rising. "Check the logs," she said, pointing at the screen. "Distress call sent 5 minutes ago. IP address tied to his phone." She nodded at Victor, whose hand froze mid-air. Greg peered over her shoulder, his wiry frame tensing as he read the data. "She's right," he said, his voice low but firm. "It's a fake. Sent from inside the cabin." Linda grabbed the satellite phone, dialing the cockpit. "Captain, it's a setup. Stand down the alert." The jet shuddered, dropping to 6,000 feet, the F-16s holding their orbit. The pilot's voice crackled back. "Relaying to ATC. Stand by." Victor's face drained of color, his trap crumbling. Nia turned to him, her smirk a blade. "You're running out of moves," she said, stepping back to her seat as the passengers erupted. Tom's camera caught it all, his lens zooming on Victor's stunned expression. Marjorie clapped once, sharp and deliberate. "Well played," she said, her tone dry. Claire exhaled. "She's a genius." Paul sank back, muttering, "He's done." The crew rallied behind Nia, Greg nodding at her with respect, Kelly's hands steadying. The intercom buzzed again. "ATC's clearing us," Captain Reese said, relief evident. F-16s are peeling off. The jets banked away, their roars fading into the dusk, leaving the cabin in stunned silence. The jet leveled at 5,000 feet, the airstrip's lights a stark line below. Passengers cheered. Claire clapped timidly, Paul joined in, even Marjorie cracked a rare smile. Tom kept filming, whispering, "She's unstoppable." Victor sank into his seat, his chest heaving. His plan in ashes. She'd hacked his hack, turned his national threat into her triumph, and the cabin was hers again. His fists clenched, his mind scrambling. 4,000 feet. They'd land soon, and he'd lost everything. But he wouldn't quit. As the jet dropped to 3,000 feet, Victor pulled out a second phone, a burner hidden in his sock. He typed a furious message to his ground team. "Emergency landing. Rural strip. Arm up. Take her out." He hit send, his lips curling into a snarl. The jet was minutes from touchdown, and he'd lost the skies, but the ground was his turf. He'd called in his private security, ex-military, loyal to his cash, and they'd be waiting. Nia might have outsmarted the F-16s, but she'd never see this coming. He pocketed the burner, his grin returning, jagged and cruel. She'd won the air, but he'd bury her in the dirt. The jet steadied at 2,000 feet, the runway lights glaring through the windows. Nia sat down, flipping open her files, her pen resuming its steady scratch. She'd cleared her name again, turned Victor's chaos into her crown, and the passengers basked in her glow. Marjorie leaned toward Tom. "She's more than a consultant." Tom nodded, his footage rolling. Claire adjusted her hair, her fear gone. Paul muttered, "He's a clown." The crew prepped for landing, Kelly securing trays, Greg checking belts. The jet's wheels whined, 1,000 feet from the ground, the airstrip a dusty promise below. Nia's victory felt solid, her calm unshakable, the cabin united behind her. Victor watched her, his grin twisting darker. The jet touched down, tires screeching on the cracked runway, dust billowing around the windows. The passengers exhaled, unbuckling as the engines wound down. But Victor's pulse quickened. His team was out there, armed and ready. He'd lost the jet, the crowd, the skies, but he'd rigged the landing. Nia's smirk lingered, her files, closing with a snap, oblivious to the ambush waiting outside. The jet rolled to a stop, the door hissing open, and Victor leaned back, his trap set. She'd saved them all, but he'd make sure she paid for it. "Hey folks, what's your take? Comment number 1 if you think Nia's the ultimate badass for outsmarting fighter jets. Drop a like if you're loving Victor's epic crash and burn, and subscribe to catch every twist of this wild ride. Who's rooting for Nia to keep owning this fight? Tell me below. Now buckle up for this. Victor's got armed goons waiting. Will Nia walk into his trap, or has she already got a plan to flip this mess upside down? What's her next move on this dusty battlefield? Stay tuned to find out. The private jet's engines wind to a stop on the cracked Nevada airstrip, dust swirling in the dusk light as the cabin door hissed open. The interior, once a cocoon of luxury with its leather seats and oak trim, now buzzed with a restless aftermath. The 15 passengers unbuckling, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion after Nia Jackson's sky-high triumph over Victor Grayson's fake distress call. Victor sat slouched, his thick frame tense, his empty whiskey glass forgotten. On the tray table, his dark eyes glinted with a predator's focus, his burner phone still warm in his pocket from the message he'd sent. Armed security waiting outside. Nia stood near her seat, her gray suit sharp as ever, stacking her files with a calm that grated on Victor's nerves. The jet's lights dimmed, the airstrip's barren expanse stretching beyond the windows, but Victor's grin was back, jagged, venomous, ready to strike. The door swung wide, and a gust of dry wind swept in, carrying the faint rumble of boots on gravel. 5 figures emerged from the shadows. Victor's private security team, ex-military brutes in black tactical gear, each gripping a sleek pistol. Their leader, a hulking man named Vance with a scarred jaw, stepped aboard, his boots thudding on the jet's floor. "We've got a situation," he barked, his voice gravelly, his gun raised. "Her." He pointed at Nia, his glare cold and unyielding. "She's a threat. Step forward, hands up, or we start shooting." The passengers froze. Claire gasped, shrinking into her seat. Paul's face drained of color. Marjorie's pen clattered to the floor. Tom Hensley fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. Victor shot up, his 6'2" frame filling the aisle, his voice a triumphant roar. "I told you she's dangerous," he shouted, jabbing a finger at Nia. "She's been playing you all. Oxygen sabotage, hijacking comms, now this. Take her out." His words dripped with racial venom, his sneer twisting as he spat. "She's a thug who doesn't belong here. Teach her a lesson she'll never forget." Vance nodded, his team fanning out. 2 flanked the galley, 2 moved toward the rear, guns trained on Nia. Kelly, the blonde flight attendant, whimpered, dropping to her knees behind a seat. Greg and Linda backed toward the cockpit, their faces pale, powerless against the armed intrusion. Nia didn't flinch. She set her files down, her deep brown eyes scanning the team with a steady, calculating gaze. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice smooth and unshaken, loud enough to carry over the tension. She raised her hand slightly, not in surrender, but in control, her lips curling into a faint smirk. "Those guns won't help you when this falls apart." Vance snorted, stepping closer, his pistol inches from her chest. "Shut it," he growled. "Move, or you're done." The passengers held their breath, the jet's interior a pressure cooker, the airstrips, silence outside a stark contrast to the brewing storm within. Victor paced behind Vance, his chest puffed out, his grin widening. "See, I run this show," he said, his voice booming for all to hear. "You thought you'd humiliated me up there? You're nothing down here." He leaned in, his breath hot with whiskey fumes, his words a low hiss. "This is where you learn your place." The team tightened their grip, their boots scuffing the floor, ready to drag her off. Claire sobbed quietly. Paul muttered, "Just do it." And even Marjorie's resolve wavered, her hands trembling. The crew cowered, Kelly's tray abandoned, Greg's fists clenched uselessly. Then Nia moved. In a blur, she ducked under Vance's arm, her agility defying the tension, and darted toward the galley. "Tom!" she shouted, her voice sharp. "Cargo hold now!" Tom snapped out of his shock, dropping his phone and bolting after her, his sandy hair bouncing as he ran. Vance spun, firing a wild shot that punched a hole in the jet's ceiling, sparks raining down. The passengers screamed. Claire dove under. Her seat. Paul shielded his head. Marjorie ducked low. Victor roared, "Get her!" As the team charged, their boots pounding the aisle. Nia reached the galley, slamming a panel open to reveal the cargo hatch controls. Her fingers flew over the buttons, overriding the lock with a speed that spoke of insider knowledge. Tom slid in beside her, panting, his eyes wide. "What's the plan?" he gasped. "Trap them," she said, hitting the final command. The hatch to the cargo hold groaned open beneath the jet, a black maw in the floor. Vance lunged, his gun raised, but Nia grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, blasting him with a cloud of white foam. He staggered, coughing, and she shoved him hard, sending him tumbling into the hold. The other four followed like dominoes. Tom tackled one, a wiry man with a buzz cut, pinning him long enough for Nia to kick his gun away. It skidded across the floor as she yanked a tray from Kelly's abandoned pile, smashing it into another's face. He reeled, clutching his nose, and stumbled into the hold. The last two rushed her, but she sidestepped, tripping one with a swift leg sweep, while Tom shoved the other from behind. They fell with muffled thuds, the hatch snapping shut behind them, locking with a loud clank. The cabin went silent, the dust settling, the passengers gaping in stunned awe. Nia brushed her hands together, her gray suit barely ruffled, her smirk back in full force. "That's handled," she said, turning to Victor, who stood frozen mid-aisle, his face a mask of disbelief. "You're running out of toys to break." The passengers erupted. Marjorie clapped first, her sharp applause cutting the silence, followed by Claire's timid cheer. Paul exhaled. "Unbelievable." His voice shaky. Tom retrieved his phone, filming again, the red light steady on Victor's unraveling. Greg and Linda emerged from their hiding spots, Greg nodding at Nia with a grin. "You're insane," he said, admiration clear. Kelly peeked out, her hands trembling but clapping softly. Victor's chest heaved, his fists clenched, his trap shattered. "You little—" he snarled, lunging for her, but Linda stepped in, her stern frame blocking him. "Enough!" she snapped, her voice iron. He stumbled back, his breath ragged, his power slipping through his fingers. The passengers rallied behind Nia. Marjorie stood, her notes forgotten. Paul crossed his arms in approval. Claire wiped her tears, smiling. Tom zoomed in, whispering, "She's a legend." The jet's door hung open, the airstrip's dust swirling outside, but Victor's team was gone, locked below, their guns useless. Nia had turned his ambush into her victory, and the cabin was hers once more. But Victor's rage boiled over. He sank into his seat, his mind racing, his humiliation a white-hot ember. She'd outsmarted his security, turned his hired muscle into a joke, and the passengers were cheering her like a damn hero. The jet sat still, the engines off, the night closing in, but he wasn't finished. He pulled out his burner phone again, his fingers trembling as he typed a new message. "Sheriff Dawson, airstrip. Arrest her for assault. Full force." He hit send, his lips twisting into a snarl. Dawson was his man, corrupt, loyal, and itching for a fight. Nia might have won the jet, but he'd bury her with the law. The passengers relaxed, their voices rising in quiet chatter. Marjorie approached Nia, offering a nod. "You're something else," she said, her tone warm. Tom kept filming, his footage a lifeline. Claire adjusted her purse, her fear replaced by awe. Paul muttered, "He's got nothing left." The crew secured the galley, Kelly sweeping up debris, Greg checking the hatch. Nia sat down, her files open again, her pen moving with quiet precision. She dodged the bullets, locked the threat, away, and the cabin glowed with her win. The airstrip stretched beyond the jet, silent and dark, but sirens wailed in the distance, faint, growing closer. Victor leaned back, his grin returning, twisted and cruel. She'd escaped his goons, but the sheriff was coming and he'd make sure she paid. The private jet sat motionless on the cracked Nevada airstrip, its engines silent, the cabin door yawning open to the dusty twilight. The interior, once a bastion of luxury with its plush seats and polished wood, now thrummed with a fragile triumph after Nia Jackson's daring takedown of Victor Grayson's armed security team. 15 passengers stretched their legs, their voices a low hum of awe and relief, their eyes darting to Nia as she sat calmly, her gray suit pristine, her files open on the tray table. Victor slumped in his seat, his thick frame coiled with rage, his empty whiskey glass a relic of his lost swagger. His burner phone rested in his lap, the message to Sheriff Dawson sent minutes ago, his lips twitching with a cruel anticipation. The airstrip stretched barren around them, but sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. Headlights pierced the dusk. 3 sheriff's SUVs screeched to a halt beside the jet, gravel crunching under their tires. 6 deputies spilled out, led by Sheriff Hank Dawson, a barrel-chested man in his 50s with a sun-weathered face and a silver badge glinting on his khaki uniform. His hand rested on a holstered pistol, his gray eyes narrowing as he climbed aboard, his boots thudding on the jet's floor. "Where's the suspect?" he barked, his voice a gravelly drawl, his gaze sweeping the cabin. Victor shot up, his 6'2" frame towering as he pointed at Naya. "Her!" he roared, his voice thick with venom. "She assaulted my security team, locked them in the hold like animals. Arrest her now." Dawson's deputies fanned out, their hands on their guns, their boots scuffing the aisle. Claire, the young assistant, shrank into her seat, her hands trembling. Paul, the balding exec, muttered, "Here we go," his earlier awe fading. Marjorie Klein gripped her armrest, her sharp eyes flickering with doubt. Tom Hensley held his phone steady, the red light blinking as he filmed, his jaw tight. The crew, Kelly, Greg, and Linda, stepped back, Kelly's tray clattering to the floor, Greg's fists clenching. Victor paced behind Dawson, his grin jagged. "She's a menace," he spat, his words laced with racial bile. "Thinks she can attack my men and walk free? Put her in her place, Sheriff." Nia didn't move. She set her pen down, folding her hands in her lap, her deep brown eyes meeting Dawson's with a steady calm. "Your men drew guns on us," she said, her voice clear and unshaken, cutting through Victor's bluster. "I defended myself and them." She nodded at the passengers who shifted uneasily, their gazes darting between her and the deputies. Dawson snorted, his hand tightening on his holster. "That's a pretty story," he growled, stepping closer. "But I've got 5 bruised boys in that hold saying different. Hands behind your back now." His deputies closed in, one pulling cuffs from his belt, the metal glinting under the cabin lights. Victor's chest puffed out, his voice booming. "See? Law's on my side," he said, his eyes raking over Nia. "You're done, sweetheart. Should have stayed out of my world." The passengers tensed. Claire whimpered. Paul crossed his arms. Marjorie's pen tapped nervously. Tom's camera stayed on, capturing Victor's gloating, Dawson's menace. The deputies grabbed Nia's arms, yanking her up, the cuffs snapping, around her wrists with a sharp click. She didn't resist, her smirk faint but unshaken, her gray suit wrinkling slightly under their grip. "This won't stick," she said, her tone a quiet promise, her eyes locked on Victor. Dawson shoved her toward the door, his deputies flanking her, their boots pounding the floor. "Move it," he snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. "Trash like you doesn't get to play hero." The slur hung heavy, raw and deliberate, echoing Victor's venom. The passengers flinched, Marjorie's jaw tightened, Paul's face flushed, Claire's eyes widened. Tom zoomed in, whispering, "Got that?" his footage rolling. The crew watched, helpless, Kelly's hands twisting together, Greg's shoulders slumping. Victor followed, his grin widening as Nia was dragged outside, the airstrip's dust swirling around her as Dawson's team shoved her toward an SUV. The cabin fell silent, the passengers staring at the empty doorway, the weight of Nia's arrest settling in. Victor turned, his voice a triumphant bellow. "That's how you handle trouble," he said, smoothing his shirt, his confidence surging. "She's gone, and I'm still here." He sank into his seat, his thick fingers brushing his burner phone, his allies crumbling, but his grip tightening. Marjorie shook her head, her voice low. "This isn't right," Paul muttered. "He's got the sheriff in his pocket." Claire wiped her eyes, silent. Tom kept filming, his lens on Victor, the red light a steady pulse, but Nia wasn't done. Outside, as Dawson shoved her against the SUV, she twisted her head, catching Tom's eye through the jet's window. "Check my bag," she called, her voice sharp, carrying over the wind. Tom blinked, then darted to her seat, rifling through her bag with shaky hands. He pulled out a small USB drive, its silver casing glinting, and plugged it into his phone. The screen lit up. A grainy audio file, time-stamped an hour ago. He hit play, and Dawson's voice crackled through. "Grayson's paying me double to lock her up. Doesn't matter what she did." The cabin froze, the passengers leaning in, their breaths held. Tom turned the phone outward, blasting the audio for all to hear. Marjorie gasped, her pen dropping. Paul's jaw dropped. "That's corruption." Claire clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. The crew surged forward. Greg snatched the phone, replaying it, Linda's stern face hardening. Victor's grin vanished, his face paling as he lunged for Tom. "Give me that!" he roared. But Greg blocked him, his wiry frame unyielding. "Back off!" Greg snapped, handing the phone to Linda, who marched to the door shouting, "Sheriff, you've got a problem!" Dawson stomped back aboard, his deputies trailing, his face a storm of fury. "What's this?" he barked, snatching the phone from Linda. The audio looped, his own voice damning him clear as day. His gray eyes widened, his hand trembling as he crushed the device under his boot, the crack echoing. "That's nothing," he snarled, but the passengers weren't buying it. Marjorie stood, her voice cutting. "That's evidence." Paul nodded. "You're cooked." Claire cheered faintly. "She got you." Tom grabbed his own phone, revealing he'd already backed up the file. "It's on here too," he said, his grin fierce. Nia stepped back inside, the deputies releasing her, their cuffs dangling uselessly. Dawson's face twisted, his authority crumbling. "Uncuff her," he muttered, his voice hollow, his deputies complying with reluctant grunts. Nia rubbed her wrists, her smirk returning, sharper now. "Told you it wouldn't stick," she said, her eyes boring into Victor. The passengers rallied. Marjorie clapped, Paul joined in. Claire's cheer grew louder. Greg handed Nia her bag, his grin wide. Linda nodded. "You're something else." Victor sank back, his chest heaving, his trap shattered again. She'd exposed his crony, turned his law into her leverage, and the cabin was hers once more. But Victor's rage flared hotter. He pulled out his burner phone, his fingers flying as he typed a new message. "Leak it." Doctored video, her attacking us nationwide. He hit send, his lips curling into a snarl. Dawson retreated, his SUVs peeling away, his power broken. But Victor wasn't done. He'd lost the sheriff, the jet, the passengers, but he'd scorch the earth. Nia sat down, her files open, her pen moving again, oblivious to the storm brewing online. The passengers settled, their voices rising in support. Marjorie praising her, Tom backing up more files, Claire smiling. The airstrip darkened, the jet still, but Victor's grin twisted, his next blow already in motion. She'd walked free, but he'd make her a fugitive. Hours after the jet's dusty standoff on the Nevada airstrip, Nia Jackson slipped into the neon-lit chaos of Los Angeles. The city's hum a stark contrast to the private jet's plush silence. Her gray suit was still sharp, her stack of files tucked under her arm as she navigated the streets, her deep brown eyes scanning for a safe corner. Victor Grayson's latest blow, a doctored video leaked online, had hit hard, painting her as a violent radical who'd attacked his security team. The clip, grainy and edited, showed her slamming a tray into a guard's face, looped with ominous music and a caption screaming, "Dangerous fugitive on the loose." Social media exploded, hashtags trending, news outlets picking it up. Within hours, Nia's face was everywhere, a target in a nationwide manhunt. Victor, holed up in a sleek hotel suite miles away, smirked at his phone, his thick fingers scrolling through the chaos he'd unleashed, his burner still warm from the order. Sirens wailed through the city, LAPD cruisers prowling the streets, their lights flashing red and blue. Nia ducked into an alley off Figueroa Street, her breath steady despite the heat prickling her neck. A chopper buzzed overhead, its spotlight slicing through the dusk, hunting her. 2 beat cops rounded the corner, their radios crackling with her description. Black female, 30s, gray suit, armed and dangerous. She pressed against a brick wall, her files clutched tight, her mind racing. Back on the jet, She'd outsmarted Victor's sheriff, exposed his corruption with Tom's audio, walked free. But this was bigger, uglier. Victor's video had turned her into a monster, and the world believed it. Her phone buzzed. Tom's number. But she silenced it, knowing a call could ping her location. The streets pulsed with danger. A grizzled man in a trucker hat spotted her, his eyes narrowing as he pulled out his phone, muttering, "That's her." He dialed 911, his voice loud enough to carry. "Yeah, I've got that crazy woman from the news. Figueroa and 8th. Nia bolted, her heels clicking on the pavement, weaving through a crowd spilling from a taco stand. A woman shrieked, "It's the terrorist!" And a teenager snapped a photo, the flash blinding. Cop cars screeched closer, tires squealing as they boxed her in. She darted into a parking garage, her breath hitching, the concrete walls echoing with shouts. Victor's lie had weaponized the city against her, every stranger a threat, every camera a noose. Back in his suite, Victor paced, his 6'2" frame casting a shadow across the marble floor. A flat screen blared a news report. Suspect. Nia Jackson, linked to a violent assault on a private jet, remains at large. He grinned, his thick fingers cracking as he flexed them. "Run all you want," he muttered, his voice a low growl. "You're mine now." His team had spliced the video from Tom's footage, twisting Nia's defense into an attack, and the public ate it up. Comments flooded online. "Lock her up. She's a disgrace." Each one a dagger he'd aimed at her heart. He'd lost the jet, the sheriff. But this was checkmate. She'd be hunted, broken, finished. Nia crouched behind a parked van, her gray suit blending with the shadows as the chopper's light swept past. Footsteps pounded closer. 2 cops, guns drawn, their radios spitting orders. "She's here somewhere," one yelled, his voice tight. She slipped off her heels, her bare feet silent on the concrete, and crept toward a stairwell. Her mind churned. She needed to flip this fast. She pulled a burner phone from her bag, a backup she'd grabbed from the jet, and dialed a string of numbers she'd memorized years ago. A hacker friend, Jax, who owed her a favor. "It's me," she whispered when he picked up. "I'm tagged. Need a broadcast. Now." Jax's voice crackled, sharp and quick. "On it. Gimme 10 minutes." Nia nodded, pocketing the phone, her smirk flickering back. She climbed the stairwell, emerging onto a rooftop overlooking the city's glowing sprawl. The chopper circled back, its beam missing her by inches as she ducked behind an AC unit. Below, cop cars multiplied, lights flashing, a net tightening. A vigilante in a pickup roared past, shouting, "I'll find her!" His shotgun gleaming. Victor's video had turned her into a pariah, a thug in the media's eyes. Every stereotype he'd flung at her now a national rallying cry. She was cornered, outgunned, but not outsmarted. 10 minutes ticked by, her pulse steady as the city hunted her. Then it hit. Every screen in Los Angeles flickered, from billboards to bar TVs, hijacked by Jax's feed. Nia's voice boomed through, clear and calm. "This is Nia Jackson. Victor. Grayson framed me. Here's the truth." The unedited jet footage rolled, Tom's recording, showing her locking the armed team in the hold to save everyone. Victor's racist rants in full color. "He's the threat," she said, her face filling the screens, her gray suit a symbol of defiance. "Not me." The city paused. Drivers gawked. Cops lowered their radios. The vigilante's truck slowed. Social media flipped, hashtags shifting. Nia truth trended, Victor lies surged. Victor's suite erupted in chaos. He smashed his whiskey glass against the wall, shards raining as the news cut to Nia's broadcast. "No!" he roared, his face purple, his thick hands clawing at the air. His phone buzzed, his tech team panicked. "It's everywhere. We can't stop it." The public turned, comments flipped to, "She's a hero. Grayson's toast," his lie crumbling under Nia's truth. He sank onto the couch, his chest heaving, his victory snatched away. She'd hacked the narrative, turned his manhunt into her megaphone, and allies poured in. Tweets, calls, a growing roar of support. Nia slipped off the rooftop, her bare feet hitting the pavement as the chopper veered away, its pilot on the radio. "Stand down, she's clear." Cops holstered their guns, confused but complying, the net unraveling. She retrieved her heels, slipping them on, her smirk widening. Victor's hotel TV blared her voice, his face a mask of defeat as she walked free, the city hers again. But his rage ignited hotter. He grabbed his burner, typing a frantic message. "Take Hensley. Kill him if she doesn't surrender." He hit send, his grin twisting, cruel and desperate. She'd won the streets, but he'd hit her where it hurt. The city buzzed, horns honking in support as Nia vanished into the night, her files clutched tight. Tom's phone rang, her number, but no answer. She was moving, planning. The manhunt faded, cop cars peeling off, the vigilante slinking away. She'd turned Victor's persecution into her pulpit, allies rising from the chaos, jacks, strangers, a swelling tide. Victor's suite darkened, his breath ragged, his trap sprung but empty. Nia's broadcast looped, her voice a beacon, but his next blow was already in motion. She'd escaped the hunt, but Tom was in his crosshairs, and Victor would make her bleed for it. Hey folks, what's your verdict? Comment number 1 if you're pumped. Nia turned Victor's lies into her victory. Drop a like if you're living, for her outsmarting this nationwide mess, and subscribe to catch every second of this epic clash. Who's with me on Nia's unstoppable rise? Tell me below. Now, here's the twist to chew on. Victor's targeting Tom. Will Nia risk it all to save him, or has she got a wild card up her sleeve to crush this monster for good? What's brewing in this showdown's next beat? Stick around to see. Midnight cloaked Los Angeles in a restless hush as Nia Jackson slipped through the city's underbelly, her gray suit now dusted with grime, her files stashed in a backpack slung over her shoulder. The neon glow of downtown faded behind her as she approached an abandoned warehouse on the edge of Skid Row, its rusted walls looming in the dark. Victor Grayson's latest strike had landed. Tom Hensley, her ally from the jet, was gone, snatched by Victor's goons after Nia's broadcast flipped the manhunt. Now, Victor's voice crackled through a live stream on her burner phone, his thick frame filling the screen from inside the warehouse. "You've got 1 hour, Nia," he sneered, panning to Tom, bound and bloodied, a gun pressed to his temple. "Surrender, or he's dead." Nia's deep brown eyes hardened, her smirk gone, replaced by a steely resolve. Inside the warehouse, Victor paced a cracked concrete floor, his 6'2" frame casting a jagged shadow under flickering fluorescent lights. 3 of his security team, scarred Vance and 2 burly grunts, stood guard, their pistols gleaming, their faces etched with grim loyalty. Tom slumped in a chair, his sandy hair matted with blood, his wrists zip-tied, a gag biting into his mouth. The live stream rolled on a tripod, its red light blinking, beaming Victor's ultimatum to the world. "You think you're untouchable?" He barked into the camera, his voice thick with venom. "Come get your little hero or I'll paint this floor with him." His words dripped with racial spite, his sneer twisting as he added, "Time to put you back where you belong, on your knees." Nia crouched outside, her breath steady as she peered through a shattered window. The warehouse reeked of oil and decay, its vast interior a maze of crates and rusted machinery. She spotted Tom, his head lolling, and Victor, his thick hands flexing, as he ranted. Her burner buzzed. Jax, her hacker friend, texting, "Cops are 30 minutes out. You're on your own till then." She nodded, pocketing the phone, her mind racing. Victor's livestream was a trap, but it was also a stage. She'd use it. She slipped off her backpack, pulling a small toolkit from its depths, her fingers brushing a coil of wire and a pocket flashlight. This wasn't the jet. This was raw, brutal, and she'd play it her way. Victor kicked Tom's chair, the wood creaking as Tom groaned through the gag. "Your savior's running scared," he taunted, his grin jagged, his eyes glinting at the camera. "She's nothing without her tricks." Vance smirked, his scarred jaw twitching as he adjusted his grip on the gun. The grunts patrolled the shadows, their boots echoing, their pistols sweeping the dark. Outside, Nia moved like a ghost, her bare feet silent on the gravel as she circled to a side door. Its lock rusted but intact. She wedged a screwdriver from her kit into the mechanism, twisting until it clicked, the door easing open with a faint groan. She slipped inside, the damp air hitting her lungs, her gray suit blending with the gloom. The warehouse's interior buzzed with tension, the live stream's hum a constant pulse. Nia crept behind a stack of crates, her flashlight off, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. She spotted a power box on the far wall, old, exposed, a tangle of wires begging for her touch. She edged closer, her toolkit in hand, her breath shallow, as Vance's boots thudded past inches away. Victor's voice boomed, 40 minutes left, Nia! Tick-tock! He slammed a fist into Tom's shoulder, drawing a muffled cry, the camera catching every flinch. Nia's jaw tightened. She'd end this, but not by his rules. She reached the power box, popping it open with a quiet snap, her fingers tracing the circuits. She spliced a wire, rerouting the lights to a single switch, then rigged a spark to flare on command. Her engineering smarts hummed. Victor wanted a show. She'd give him one. She crept back, positioning herself behind a rusted forklift, her eyes on Tom. Victor paced, his rant escalating. "You're a plague," he spat, his voice a growl. "Think you can ruin me? I'll bury you and your kind." The racial venom poured out, raw and unfiltered, his thick hands balling into fists. As he loomed over Tom, Nia struck. She flipped the switch and the warehouse plunged into darkness, the live stream flickering. A second later, her rigged spark erupted, a blinding flash near the grunts, who yelped, their guns swinging wildly. She darted forward, her wire coil in hand, and looped it around Vance's ankle as he stumbled, yanking hard. He crashed to the floor, his pistol skidding away, his scarred face slamming into concrete. The grunts fired blindly, bullets pinging off metal, but Nia was already moving, a shadow in the chaos. She reached Tom, slicing his zip ties with her screwdriver, pulling the gag free. "Run," she whispered, shoving him toward the side door. Victor roared, "She's here!" his voice cracking as he grabbed the fallen gun, the livestream tilting as he knocked the tripod. Tom staggered, his legs shaky, but Nia pushed him on, her gray suit a blur as she spun to face Victor. The lights flickered back, dim and unsteady, revealing Vance groaning, the grunts scrambling and Victor aiming at her, his thick finger on the trigger. "You're dead," he bellowed, firing a shot that grazed her shoulder, blood blooming on her sleeve. She didn't flinch, her smirk flashing as she ducked behind a crate, her breath sharp but steady. Tom stumbled out the door, collapsing in the gravel as sirens wailed closer. 20 minutes out now. Inside, Nia rolled, grabbing a metal pipe, from the floor, her shoulder throbbing but her focus razor-sharp. She hurled it at Victor, catching his wrist, the gun clattering away. He lunged, his bulk crashing into her, pinning her against a crate. "You're nothing," he hissed, his breath hot, his hands clawing for her throat. She twisted, kneeing his gut, breaking free as he doubled over, gasping. The livestream rolled on, its lens catching his fury, her defiance. Viewers saw it, all the chat exploding. "She's fighting back! He's a monster!" Nia darted for the gun, scooping it up as Vance staggered to his feet, his face bloodied. She aimed, her voice ice. "Stay down!" He froze, hands up, his grunt allies, backing off, their pistols lowering. Victor wheezed, clutching his stomach, his eyes wild as he glared at her. "You can't win," he spat, his voice ragged. She smirked, blood dripping from her shoulder, the gun steady. "I already have." The livestream looped his collapse, her stand, flipping his threat into her triumph. Viewers turned, his cruelty exposed, her courage blazing. But Victor's desperation surged. As cop lights flashed outside 10 minutes away, he pulled a detonator from his pocket, a last-ditch bomb rigged beneath the warehouse, his final card. "If I go down, you all do," he snarled, thumbing the button. A low rumble shook the floor, dust raining as Nia's eyes widened. She dove, tackling Tom outside just as the warehouse erupted, flames licking the sky, debris flying. They hit the gravel, her gray suit singed, his breath ragged, the blast's roar drowning Victor's scream. The livestream cut, static replacing, his face, but his trap had backfired. Nia lived and he'd framed her again. The night swallowed the wreckage, sirens screaming closer. 5 minutes out. Nia pulled Tom to his feet, her shoulder bleeding, her smirk faint but unbroken. "We're not done," she said, her voice steady as they staggered into the shadows. The city's edge a jagged line ahead. Victor's goons lay buried, his bomb his own undoing. But the world would blame her. Terrorism now, not just assault. She'd saved Tom, turned the stream against Victor, but his final blow had landed. Cop lights pierced the dark, choppers buzzing. And Nia moved, her files lost in the fire, her fight far from over. Dawn broke over the Los Angeles outskirts, painting the sky a bruised purple as Nia Jackson and Tom Hensley staggered through a scrubby field, the smoldering wreckage of the warehouse a dark smear behind them. Nia's gray suit hung in tatters, singed and bloodied from the bomb Victor Grayson had detonated, her shoulder wound throbbing with every step. Tom limped beside her, his sandy hair caked with dirt, his face bruised from Victor's beating, but alive, thanks to her. The city's edge loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette of towers and lights, but the air buzzed with menace. Choppers thumped overhead, their spotlights slashing through the morning mist, and sirens screamed from every direction. Victor's final act, blowing the warehouse and framing Nia for terrorism, had unleashed a federal storm, and she was its eye. News vans clogged the highways, their feeds screaming, "Terrorist attack in LA, suspect Nia Jackson at large." The doctored narrative spun fast, Victor's bomb pinned as her doing, the live stream's end twisted into proof of her guilt. Talking heads ranted, "She's a radical, a menace," their words echoing Victor's venom, racial undertones thick as tar. Nia's face flashed on every screen, her gray suit now a terrorist's uniform in the public eye. She tossed her burner phone into a ditch, its screen cracked from the blast, and pulled Tom behind a rusted billboard, her deep brown eyes scanning the horizon. "They're coming," she said, her voice steady despite the pain, her smirk gone but her resolve ironclad. FBI vans roared into the field, tires kicking up dust as agents in black vests spilled out, rifles raised, their shouts cutting the air. "Nia Jackson, surrender now!" A megaphone blared, its echo bouncing off the hills. Choppers circled tighter, their downdraft flattening the grass, spotlights pinning her shadow. Tom crouched, his breath ragged, his hands trembling. "They think you did it," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Victor's won." Nia shook her head, her jaw tight. "Not yet," she said, her mind racing. She'd lost her files, her tools, but she had Tom and his footage, still safe on his phone, a lifeline if she could wield it. Back in his hotel suite, Victor paced a shattered room, glass crunching under his boots from his earlier rage. His thick frame slumped onto a couch, his face swollen with fury, his burner buzzing with updates. "Feds on her, warehouse pinned, you're clear." He grinned, jagged and cruel, his 6'2" shadow stretching across the wall. The news looped his victim story. Brave CEO survives terrorist employee. His racist rants scrubbed, his image polished. "She's finished," he muttered, his thick fingers cracking as he flexed them. He'd lost the jet, his team, his sheriff. But this was his masterpiece. Nia, a national villain, him the martyr. He sank deeper into the cushions, savoring the chaos he'd sown. Nia peeked from behind the billboard, her shoulder pulsing with pain as agents fanned out, their rifles glinting in the dawn. A lead agent, a wiry man named Kessler with a buzz cut, barked orders, his voice sharp. "She's armed. Shoot on sight." The profiling was blatant, her race, her defiance twisted into threat. She pulled Tom lower, her breath shallow, but controlled. "Your phone," she whispered, nodding at his pocket. "The footage. Upload it." Tom fumbled, his bruised hands shaking as he pulled it out, the screen flickering but alive. "No signal," he hissed, panic rising. She grabbed it, her fingers flying over the settings, boosting the weak bars with a trick Jax had taught her. The choppers dipped lower, their roar deafening, dust swirling as agents closed in 50 yards away. Nia synced the phone to a satellite hotspot, her engineering smarts humming despite the chaos. "Come on," she muttered, uploading Tom's unedited jet footage, the oxygen fix, the security fight, Victor's rants. The warehouse truth. The file crawled, the progress bar agonizingly slow as boots crunched closer, 40 yards now. Kessler's voice boomed. "Last chance, Jackson." A sniper's red dot danced on the billboard, inches from her head. Tom's breath hitched. "We're dead." But Nia's eyes stayed locked on the screen, her pulse steady. The upload hit 90%, then 95%. At 100%, she hit send, the footage blasting to Jax's network. Billboards, news feeds, every screen in LA. Her voice cut through again. "Victor Grayson bombed his own warehouse. I saved us. Here's proof." The city jolted. Drivers honked. Pedestrians gawked. Agents paused, their radios crackling with confusion. Kessler's earpiece buzzed, his face tightening as he listened. "Stand down," he snapped, his rifle lowering, his team halting, 30 yards out. The choppers veered, their lights dimming, the net loosening. Nia's broadcast looped, Victor's snarls. "Put her in her place," ringing out, his lies shredded. Social media flipped, Nia hero soared, Victor terrorist spiked. Victor's suite erupted in chaos. He lunged at the TV, smashing it with a lamp, sparks flying as Nia's footage played. "No!" he roared, his face purple, his thick hands clawing the air. His burner buzzed. His team. "Feds shifting. You're exposed." He stumbled, his chest heaving, his triumph ash. The news cut to live feeds, agents storming his hotel, cuffs ready. He bolted for the door, but sirens wailed outside, his escape cut off. Back in the field, Nia stood, her gray suit a tattered flag. Tom beside her as Kessler approached, his face grim. "You're clear," he said, holstering his gun. "Grayson's in custody." The passengers from the jet, Marjorie, Claire, Paul, watched from afar, their phones buzzing with Nia's truth, their cheers faint but growing. Tom clutched his phone, his footage her salvation, his grin breaking through the bruises. Nia's shoulder bled, but her eyes gleamed, her victory hard won. The choppers landed, agents swarming Victor's hotel, his thick frame cuffed as he screamed, "She's nothing." The city roared with her name, the terrorist label dust, her broadcast a beacon. She'd cleared her name, turned his bomb into her crown, and Victor was finished, almost. But his spite lingered. From jail, Victor barked orders to a loyal exec via a smuggled call. "Coup Titan, smear her, lock her out." His voice rasped, his thick fingers gripping the bars as he hung. Up, his grin twisting. Nia's allies rallied. Jax, Tom, a swelling tide. But his corporate machine churned, a final racist smear brewing. Unfit to lead. She walked free, the field quiet now, her breath steady as cop cars peeled off, the dawn brightening. Tom limped beside her, muttering, "You did it." She nodded, her smirk faint but returning, her fight shifting to Titan's boardroom. Victor was cuffed, but his last strike was coming, and she'd face it head on. Noon blazed over Los Angeles, the sun glinting off the glass tower of Titan Industries headquarters, a sleek monolith piercing the city skyline. Nia Jackson strode through the lobby, her gray suit patched and bloodstained from the warehouse. Blast, her shoulder bandaged but her deep brown eyes blazing with purpose. Tom Hensley limped beside her, his sandy hair tousled, his phone clutched tight with the footage that had cleared her name hours ago. Victor Grayson's arrest. Cuffed and raging as feds hauled him from his hotel. Played on every screen. His terrorist label flipped back onto him. But his final strike lingered, a corporate coup brewing within Titan's walls. His loyalists, poised to lock Nia out. She'd beaten him in the air, on the ground, in the streets. Now she'd take his empire. The boardroom doors loomed ahead, a fortress of polished oak on the 30th floor. Nia pushed through, her heels clicking on. Marble, Tom trailing as they entered a war zone of suits and sneers. 8 board members sat around a gleaming table, their faces a gallery of privilege. Gray-haired men and one pinched woman, Victor's puppets, their eyes narrowing at her arrival. Leading them was Harold Vance, a gaunt 60-year-old with a hawkish nose. Victor's right hand for decades. He stood, his voice a dry rasp. "You're not welcome here, Jackson. The board's voted. You're out." Papers rustled. a forged memo branding her unfit to lead. Victor's racist venom dripping from every line. Nia stopped, her tattered suit a stark contrast to their pristine pinstripes, her breath steady despite the ambush. "Voted?" she said, her voice smooth and sharp, cutting through their smugness. "Without me. That's bold." Tom set his phone on the table, its screen dark but loaded, his bruised face defiant. Harold smirked, tapping the memo. "Your antics, violence, chaos, prove you're a liability. Victor warned us about your kind." The slur hung unspoken but heavy, his allies nodding. Margaret, a severe woman in pearls, muttered, "Disgraceful," while a balding man, Richard, sneered, "She'll ruin us." The room pulsed with their disdain, Victor's shadow still, thick despite his cuffs. Nia's lips twitched, her smirk flickering back as she leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. "My kind built this company while Victor ran it into the ground," she said, her tone ice cold. "You're locking out the wrong person," Harold scoffed, waving a hand. "Security's on its way. You're done." The board leaned back, their confidence a wall. Victor's call from jail had armed them with lies, a smear campaign branding Nia, a radical unfit for leadership, her race their unspoken weapon. Tom's jaw tightened, his fingers brushing his phone, but Nia held up a hand, her eyes locked on Harold. She wasn't running. Footsteps thudded outside. 2 guards in black uniforms burst in, their hands on batons, ready to drag her out. "Ma'am, let's go," one grunted, his bulk looming. Nia didn't budge, her voice rising. "Check your email," she said, nodding at Harold. "Now." He frowned, his gaunt face twisting as he pulled out his tablet, the board shifting uneasily. An alert pinged, a legal document from Titan's counsel, timestamped that morning. Harold's eyes scanned it, his smirk fading, his skin paling. "What is this?" he muttered, his voice cracking. Nia straightened, her gray suit a battered crown. "Ownership papers," she said. "I bought Titan 3 years ago. Silently. Legally. You're sitting in my room." The board erupted. Margaret gasped, clutching her pearls. Richard slammed his fist on the table. "Impossible!" Harold scrolled frantically, the document's seal undeniable. Nia Jackson, majority shareholder, CEO by right. The guards hesitated, their batons lowering, their eyes darting to her. Tom grinned, his phone lighting up as he played the jet footage. Again, Victor's rants, her triumphs, for the board to see. "She's the boss," he said, his voice firm, the red light steady. Nia stepped forward, her presence filling the room. "You thought Victor's coup would work? I've owned you all along." Harold lunged, his gaunt frame shaking as he shoved the tablet at her. "This is fraud," he shouted, his allies rising, their voices a chorus of denial. "You can't lead, look at you," Margaret spat. "She's unfit, a thug in a suit." The racism boiled over, raw and desperate, Victor's echo in their venom. Nia's smirk widened, her voice cutting through. "Unfit? I saved Titan from his mess. Jets, bombs, lies. You're the ones who failed." The guards stepped back, their radios crackling with updates. Victor's arrest, Nia's broadcast, the truth spreading. The board faltered, their wall cracking, Harold's hands trembling. Nia pulled a chair, sitting with a calm that shattered them. "Call security if you want," she said, nodding at the guards. "But they work for me now." The room froze, the board's power draining. As reality sank in, Tom's footage looped, Victor's put her in her place snarl, Nia's oxygen fix, her warehouse rescue, proof of her grit, his rot. Harold sank back, his gaunt face ashen, Margaret's pearls clinking as she shook. Richard muttered, "We're done," his bald head gleaming with sweat. The guards retreated, their batons sheathed, the door swinging shut behind them. Nia's victory glowed, her gray suit a testament, the board hers. But Victor's spite struck one last time. From jail, his smuggled call had planted a final seed. A lawsuit filed that morning, forged evidence claiming Nia stole Titan through deception and threats. Harold's tablet buzzed again, the legal notice popping up. Victor's desperate. Claw from behind bars. "You're not clear yet," Harold rasped, his smirk twitching back. "He's suing you. Says you're a fraud. Court's next." The board rallied faintly, Margaret nodding. "She'll fall." Richard clutching the memo like a lifeline. Naya's eyes narrowed, her smirk steady, but her mind racing. Victor's coup had failed, but his lie lingered, a courtroom noose tightening. She stood, her shoulder throbbing but her voice unshaken. "Let him try," she said, her tone a blade. "I've buried him before." Tom pocketed his phone, his grin fierce, the footage her shield. The boardroom quieted, the board's defiance wilting under her gaze. Harold's hands dropped, Margaret's pearls stilled. Richard's memo crumpled. Outside, news vans circled, their feeds shifting. Nia Jackson takes Titan. The city, hers, Victor's screams from jail a fading echo. She'd stormed his empire, turned his coup to ash, but the lawsuit loomed, his final venomous gasp. The guards flanked her now, loyal to her command, the room hers. But the fight wasn't over. Dusk settled over Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps as Nia Jackson emerged, her gray suit patched but proud, her deep brown eyes glinting under the flash of cameras. Tom Hensley stood beside her, his bruises fading, his phone now a trophy of their fight. Inside, the judge had ruled. Victor Grayson's lawsuit, a forged claim of theft, collapsed under scrutiny, its lies shredded by Nia's legal proof. 3 years ago, she'd bought Titan Industries through silent deals, her name etched in ironclad contracts. The gavel had fallen, Victor's last strike dead, and Nia stood as CEO, unchallenged, her empire secure. Reporters swarmed, their mics thrusting forward, but her smirk said more than words ever could. Victor slumped in a jail cell miles away, his 6'2" frame hunched, his thick hands gripping bars as guards dragged him to a hearing room. His orange jumpsuit hung loose, his face a mask of rage, his racist reign ash after Nia's broadcast, jet rants, warehouse bomb, all public, now buried him. The judge's voice echoed in his skull. Dismissed. Ms. Jackson owns Titan. His empire, his legacy, stripped by the woman he'd mocked, his screams useless against her victory. But Nia wasn't done. She stepped to a podium, her voice, steady, cutting through the dusk. "I didn't just win," she said, cameras rolling. "I planned this." The twist unfurled. She'd bought Titan years back, a shadow player watching Victor's rot, his bigotry, her fuel. "I let him dig his grave," she said, her smirk widening. "Every slur, every trap, he built my case." She'd orchestrated it all, the jet, the fights, his downfall, turning his venom into her throne. The crowd gasped, reporters scribbling, Tom grinning beside her. Victor's cell TV blared her words, his fists pounding steel, his roar drowned by her truth. She'd owned him from the start, his empire hers, to burn and rebuild. Nia turned away, her gray suit a banner, the city hers. "This was always my jet," she said, her final jab a whisper to the wind. Victor's cell darkened, his thick frame collapsing, powerless, while her steps echoed up the steps. CEO, Victor, mastermind. The cameras flashed, her legacy lit. His racism a ruin at her feet. Nia Jackson's relentless journey through Victor Grayson's barrage of racism and sabotage offers raw, powerful lessons. First, resilience outshines oppression. Nia faced slurs, frame-ups, and bombs, yet her grit turned every attack into her strength, proving that perseverance can dismantle even the tallest towers of hate. Second, intelligence is a weapon. Her engineering smarts and strategic mind flipped Victor's traps, showing that knowledge can outmaneuver brute power. Third, truth cuts deeper than lies. Nia's broadcasts shattered Victor's fabricated terrorist label, reminding us that exposing reality can shift tides when systems fail. Fourth, systemic racism doesn't bend without a fight. Victor's board, sheriff, and media allies clung to prejudice. But Nia's calculated takeover of Titan Industries proves that dismantling bias demands bold, unrelenting action. Finally, justice isn't handed out, it's seized. Nia didn't wait for fairness. She engineered her victory, revealing she'd owned Titan all along, a masterstroke against a bigot who underestimated her from the start. This story isn't just a thrill ride, it's a mirror. It challenges us to confront the victors in our world, to wield our own tools, wit, courage, truth, against those who thrive on division. Nia's triumph isn't luck, it's a blueprint for anyone facing a stacked deck. So what's the takeaway? Stand tall, fight smart, and turn their hate into your crown. Because the real win isn't surviving the storm, it's steering it. What do you think? Could you outsmart a victor in your life? Drop a comment with your #1 lesson from Nia's saga. Hit like if her comeback fired you up, and subscribe for more epic battles against injustice. Share this with someone who needs a spark to fight back. Thanks for riding this roller coaster with us. Here's to crushing ceilings and building legacies that last.